I'm Eric Naso with Newsshooter.com. I'm here at Cine Gear Expo 2017, and I'm with Mitch Gross, the Vericam Cinema Product Manager. Is that correct?
I am Cinema Product Manager, not just Vericam, but all of our lovely cinema products.
Speaking of lovely cinema products, what do we have here?
This is our new baby. This is the AU-EVA1.
I like to call it EVA1 because I think it has that sexy kind of sound to it.
You may call her whatever you wish.
Well, let's go through some of the exciting features of this brand new camera. First off, I think it's amazing. I was going over some of the specifications. Wow. That's really all I can really say is wow. So let's go ahead and go through it and let's wow everybody else as well.
All right. Well, first let's get into the kind of the concept of the camera, because Panasonic has a very long history with making digital cinema cameras. We started with the original Vericam many years ago. That was a 2/3 inch camera, the 27V, and then the DVX100 came out and kind of really revolutionized the industry for making independent cinema, sort of lower end, kind of have that 24 frame look and such. And then a few years ago we came out with the modern Vericam line with the Super 35 sensors, and there's the Vericam 35, the Vericam LT, and the Vericam Pure, which is all raw data. And then on our consumer end, we're kind of coming from the other side. We have the GH series of cameras, and now we have up to the GH5, which is a terrific little camera. It's amazing what you get in this little machine. But there was sort of a gap between these two. You have very, very high end, and then the consumer end, and then there was this grand space between them. And so we realized we needed to have something for clients who were coming from the big end, and they needed to have something of a different kind of scale of camera and a different kind of functionality. And then also people who were moving up from the consumer end, and they needed to have something that was, really a camera that was a dedicated video cinema style production machine as opposed to a stills style camera. All of those cameras have their place, but we needed something in between.
It's a very ambitious camera. It has 10-bit, 422. It fits in an amazing place at its price points. The Panasonic cameras, the Vericam, the GH5, and how this kind of camera fits in between, but that's a pretty big gap to fill.
Yeah, it is a big space, and yet when you look at what all our camera offerings are, we don't like to cripple any of our machines and have them kind of just barely make something kind of where. No, we really want to overload the features and functionality within each kind of category. So it's just a really, really versatile machines. So this camera, when you look at the size and scale of it, you think it might be one kind of thing, but then what we did is all right, we're going to really throw the kitchen sink at it and add lots of functionality.
You threw a lot more than the kitchen sink at this thing.
Well, we can say, okay, is it 4K? Yes, it's 4K. It's actually, in certain ways, beyond 4K. What kind of frame rates can it do? Well, we can do 4K up to 60 frames per second. In 2K, we can go up to 240 frames per second. What's our color sampling? Well, we did 10-bit and up to 422. Again, depending on which formats and recording things, we have all these different combinations you can do, but you can get up to 10-bit 422. And then what are you recording in your codec? How much depth in that signal do you have? Well, we're going to have a bit rate of up to, again, different options, 400 megabits per second. So that's a very robust, rich signal that you're going to be recording. Lots of material there to work with. And it'll have V-Log and V-Gamut so that you'll be able to really get the most out of the picture. The sensor, it's Super 35, but it's not 4K, it's beyond 4K. It's actually a 5.7K sensor. Now, what are you going to do with a 5.7K sensor? Well, there's sort of three things. The first is, there's a lot of people over the years when bare pattern sensors and such first came in and using single sensor, that people were like, well, you're going to be doing this processing and color sampling out from the sensor thing, and it's really, what is the resolution that you're really getting out of it? Well, this sort of answers all that, because if you want to get a really rich, true 4K image, you start with 5.7K, and you derive a 4K from that, you're going to have a very high resolving, really beautiful image. You're also going to have more color information because there's simply more individual photo sites of red and green and blue, and so you're going to have a lot more color to get a very rich, deep color sampling. And we're still tweaking on what the camera will deliver. The camera's going to be shipping in the fall, so we don't yet know. We don't want to give a number for sensitivity, but this has, like the VariCam cameras that are sister to the EVA1, this has dual native ISO. Dual native ISO is an exclusive thing to Panasonic. It's a fundamentally different way of reading information off the sensor. I mean, you can take any camera and just gain up and get more sensitivity that way, but you're going to get more noise in the signal too. So what dual native ISO does is that we have the traditional way of reading information off the sensor, and that's one ISO reading. And then we also have a special optimized way where it's a fundamentally different way of reading information off the sensor. And what it gives you is a higher sensitivity without paying the price of a change in noise or altering dynamic range or other things in the image. You just get more signal. And so you have two native ISOs. And people would say, well, why don't you just go with the higher one? Well, if we're shooting outdoors in the daytime, you don't want the high sensitivity. You want to be, and maybe you want to control your depth of field by shooting at a lower sensitivity. We have that one available, and then you can apply gain to these things if you want. And then we also are going to have the higher sensitivity, and you can apply gain to that or not if you want. And so you have just sort of like two different film stocks, if you will.
Do you have a range yet for the ISO levels?
Well, again, we are still tweaking on the camera. It will be shipping in the fall, and the sensor is working, and it worked lovely. It's a brand new piece of technology that was developed just for EVA1. So we don't know yet where we're going to land with that. We have a pretty good idea, and we think that people are going to be very happy with it. But we don't want to give a number on the ISO sensitivities. We also don't want to give a number on the dynamic range. We expect it to have a very, very nice dynamic range, but we just don't want to give false expectations at this point. That's why we're previewing the camera. That's why we're saying it is a preview event to see the camera, but we can't give all the specs yet because we're a conservative company in that way. We want to be very clear and honest about what it will deliver. We are going to have the VariCam colorimetry, and that very beautiful color that people really love and has very natural, accurate skin tones and just has a lovely look to it. It's going to share that color spectrometry on the EVA1. So EVA1 will be able to work with VariCams very well, or just on its own to get that look. And likewise, because it has V-Log and V-Gamut, you'll be able to match this camera well with a smaller camera, such as a GH5. It's part of a family. We want them to work together. We never want to pigeonhole one camera to be just one thing. So for some people, this is going to be their absolute A camera, and it's going to be, you can expand the use of it. It uses the little Panasonic 7.2 volt batteries, but it has a 12 volt input, so you'll be able to put accessory back things on it and power it off other things. You're going to be able to build it out. It's got mounting holes and such on it, so that there'll be third-party accessory guys that we're going to really build out the camera. There's the hand grip on the side here, and that is adjustable and repositionable, so that you can get accessory things for that as well. So, this whole top handle also comes off, so then it becomes really small. So you can really build it up, or you can shrink it down. If I take off this hand grip and take off the top handle and the LCD with it, you have this very tiny little box, and that's great to go into a car rig or onto a gimbal or on a drone or something. You can, really, really petite rig. So it could be a big rig for someone. It could be a very, very small rig for someone as well. And it's just, again, the different ways that we want people to be able to utilize these machines.
And what's the weight of the camera?
It's quite light. It is a 1.2 kilo camera, which that's when you strip down and with the bare basics. But in pounds, I think that was 2.65.
Yeah, I think it was
2.65 pounds. So it's a very lightweight, petite kind of camera. It's right now as I'm picking this up, I think the lens is about on par with the weight of the camera, and that was one of the reasons with going with an EF mount. Because an EF lens mount meant that not only are there lots of lenses that are available from many manufacturers. In fact, at the show here today, there's a lot of high-end manufacturers of optics that have various interchangeable mounts for their lenses. So you can put lots of different lenses on here, but it also meant that you can get the excellent glass that is compact and lightweight to match sort of the scale of what this camera is, so that then you have something that is very easy to run around handheld with and be able to do lots of different types of production, or you can build it up again as you wish.
Does the EF mount support IS lenses?
EF mount has electronic connectivity to it. We do have electronic image stabilization. There will be some control with focus. So again, the camera is not finished yet. It is in preview. We are going to have a lot of interface with the lens. Certainly we have an iris wheel right on the side here, so you'll be able to dial in the iris control in there. And so there is a lot of interface with the camera.
You mentioned electronic image stabilization. That's a little different than image stabilization from the lens. What does EIS mean to the EVA1?
We have multiple axes of control for image stabilization. Can't really say more than that at this point, just because I'm not in a position to share any more than that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the body. Something that's not on here is an EVF. Why was the decision to not add an EVF to the EVA1?
It is an interesting thing. First off, the LCD does come with a built-in sunshade that we popped it off here for now, but it'll have a sunshade that it comes with it as standard. And this can be moved from this position back here or on the other side, or if you take off the handle, that is a 1/4-20, so that it'll actually mount right onto the top of the camera, and you can have a very petite rig that way. Mm-hmm. What we found in talking to people, the development process for a camera like this takes years. I mean, and there's a lot of conversations that we have with working filmmakers and people who, want what they want out of cameras, and we try to answer the most. We found that the old idea of a regular viewfinder stuck on the back of a camera was vestigial at best. It was like, it's like your old appendix.
Does that mean that it really isn't that good?
Well, it's not. It's that it wasn't utilized. It just was something that people didn't really use very much.
Generally, on the lower models, the EVFs are not very good. They're just you end up trying other solutions.
What I would say is, whether it was a fantastic viewfinder or not, if it's a little viewfinder stuck on the back of a camera, people just aren't utilizing it very much. And if that's the case, it adds weight, it adds power draw, it adds physical size, as well as the fact that it's an expense for us to include, which means it would raise the cost of the camera. So by eliminating such things, why have something on the camera that people pretty much are just not going to use? If you really want a viewfinder, there's going to be third-party accessories to be able to, put like a loop on here sort of thing, or you can even there's third-party manufacturers of viewfinders that you could mount right on the camera. And so if you really want to be able to work that way, you can, but why force you to have something on your camera that you're pretty much not going to use? That's kind of the theory.
And the connection here, is this a proprietary connection to the LCD? And is it possible to maybe have a third party, an EVF that'll take the information to the camera from, that you need? And also, how would you interface with an external EVF if you choose to do so? SDI, HDMI, and you can obviously get your menu settings in there.
The connection for the viewfinder is a proprietary type connection. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't be willing to share it perhaps with certain third-party companies, but it's not a standard video connection. But it's possible that maybe we could work with someone in the future for that. There are HDMI as well as SDI outputs on the camera. They are both 4K capable, so the SDI as well is a 4K capable output on the camera, and you would be able to use those with a viewfinder. Additionally, something we hadn't mentioned before, that SDI output in the future, it won't be when the camera first ships, but later on we'll have a firmware update, and you will be able to get the raw data from that 5.7K sensor. You'll be able to have that available to go to a third-party recorder over SDI.
Let's talk a little about audio as well. It has 2 XLR inputs. Does it have any other options?
Dual XLR inputs on the back here, and it even has a built-in stereo mic right on the front. So that way, again, depending on the type of work you're doing, you have stuff available to you. But the grip, which does have electronic controls on it, is adjustable, so it's rotatable. as well as it can be removed and repositioned. And so again, with third-party accessorizing, you'll be able to reposition the hand grip around to, rig it out however you have your own personal preference. Or you can just take it away if you don't want to have that there and you need to slim down the size of the camera. Again, it becomes a very petite box. If you sort of look at it this way, you can imagine without that top handle, without the side grip, you're looking at what is a very, very small footprint.
Yeah, very nice. Let's talk a little bit about the panel on the side here and all the functionality that it's offered on the EVA1.
Well, looking at it here, you can see that we have an iris wheel, which can then be, you have multiple controls for how you'll interface with these things. You have ND filtration, which will just, it's push button so that it'll quickly just flip in a filter for the next level of filtration there. Not seen there, but just like the ND can flip in and out, we also have a little something we kind of borrowed from the VariCam LT, which is that camera you can open up, take off the lens, and physically remove the IR filter, the IR protection cut filter. We have a menu item so that you'll be able to just push a button and a little motor will flip in and out your IR filter. Well, why would you want to do that? Two reasons. One, you can get a filter that you put on the front of your lens, which is an IR. It's a visible light filter. So it's an IR only filter, if you wish. So it'll only let infrared light come through, and then if you take away the filter that's built in, the IR cut, then the only thing hitting the sensor is infrared light, and you'll get those crazy color, wild looking effect of infrared photography. It also can be really nice for a sort of a night vision, extending your range and your sensitivity. So for shooting at night, you can get, again, this is something where it's a lot of different functions that the camera has built into it. So that's just a sort of unique thing. You just can't get that sort of thing from anyone else. They'll have that flip in and out. It has dual slots, and by having these little SD cards, the idea is not only is the camera itself small and inexpensive to own, but the cost to operate. We want the continuing cost. We wanted to be able to keep the camera small and keep the rigging of it small and the kit to it small, and the price to be petite as well.
What is the base price, the estimated price, and when do you expect it to deliver?
The camera will be shipping this fall. Can't really lock down a date beyond that, but it'll be shipping in this fall, and we are on track for that to happen. And the price will be under $8,000 US.
When do you expect some samples of image samples to come out?
We're going to be having we have a rig that's working and making images and such in Japan, and these cameras will be, during the course of the summer, we're going to be having more units that we're doing testing on. But right, what's happening now is you're tweaking it, just because you can get your engine to run, but then you got to tune it. And so there's a lot of bits and everything works and it's working the way it's supposed to, but we just have to kind of tweak things to see exactly how much we can fine tune out of the machine, and that will be happening. It's all on course. It's going to be happening over the course of the summer.
All right. A very exciting new camera release, the EVA1, or I like to call her EVA1. Thanks a lot, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great show.